Welcome, everybody. If you are watching this today, then it is a full moon in Aries, so full moon blessings. We're gonna work a little bit with some themes around the full moon. The full moon period lasts about 2 weeks, so anytime you watch this, it'll be perfect. Full moons are illuminations. They represent things that we can release, and they also, especially this full moon, is a great time to celebrate our wins. Mars, the ruler of Aries, gives us courage and a sense of free will and inner power, and helps us to resolve conflict and really push forward. So it's a really great time to just see how far you've come, what your ambition and inner fire has led you to thus far, and to really take time to celebrate that. So maybe even setting an intention for this practice to think of something that you're really proud of, an accomplishment, big or small, that you're really grateful for, and just really take a moment to acknowledge our wins. I think when we do that and we celebrate ourselves and we celebrate each other, it helps us to really acknowledge it and to continue to expect that in the future. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into the practice today. We are going to work a little bit with the upper body. We've spent most of our time for the last 3 weeks really grounding in the root chakra, the second chakra, honoring that kind of landing and grounding element of balancing out Vata season. However, I do want this to be a well-rounded practice for you. I want to be able to hit all areas of the body. We've spent a lot of time with grounding, so now I think we can open up a bit. This practice will still be really grounding, really rooting, and really nourishing, but we are going to focus a lot on the upper body and the shoulders. If you are working at a computer, at a desk, if you are sitting a lot, if you are driving a lot, even being on the phone or on the computer, there is a way in which we are generally hunched forward. The shoulders are generally drawn forward, and it can create a lot of tension in the neck, in the upper back. So we're just going to work to release some of that. I'll give you modifications as we go. But for today, I'm really just going to use a pillow. And I'm going to use a fluffy kind of couch pillow. But you can use any kind of square pillow, or even a rectangular bed pillow would work for this. And I'm going to use one blanket. You might want to use 2 blankets or a bolster, depending on how much you like to prop yourself. But if you're watching this on record, you can just pause the video at any time and find what you need. Thick towels, blankets, even like throw blankets can work well here. Okay, so let's get onto the mat. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is this is my couch pillow that I'm gonna use. We're not gonna start with it, but what I am going to do is take my blanket. I'm just gonna open it up into a rectangle, place it on the mat, and this is just gonna be support for my shins and my knees to create a little bit of softness in the pose. We're gonna start with a child's pose, and then we're gonna move into a puppy dog to open up the shoulders a little bit and the side body. So I like to start with knees a little bit wide, and then we're gonna reach out in front of us and come down into a child's pose. The head can rest on the mat. Now, if this is too much for the hips or the feet, there are a few modifications you can make. You can put the pillow in between your butt and your heels to give you a little more lift, to give your hips a little more ease, and maybe also a little more stretch in the spine. And then if you need a little more support today, but the hips feel okay, you can also place the pillow in front of you and come over it with the belly for a little bit more of a restorative child pose. Okay, so go ahead and settle into that. We're gonna be here for about 3 minutes. can place the forehead straight down. I'm going to keep my head lifted so you can hear my voice. If you're placing the forehead flat on the mat, you can smooth the skin of the forehead towards the eyes, and that'll be calming for the nervous system. If that's really not comfortable, you can place the elbows down. You can make a pillow with your hands, rest the forehead there. Or you can turn the cheek to one side. So find the position that works for you. Allow the seat to heavy. See if you can allow some breath to move up into the low back, the mid back. Let the head relax into your support. Good. Take a couple more breaths here. On your next inhale, we're going to lift up onto hands and knees. And now option here is to come down onto the elbows. Keep the seat lifted and just a stretch, a deeper stretch into the shoulders. So if you come onto the elbows, shoulder distance apart, and then you start to move the hips backward, you can bring the hands together and just let them rest behind the head. You can let the head relax down. And then you can press the feet down and pull the hips back. Now, what I want to do here is really arch my low back. So I'm going to draw my front ribs in and tone my low belly a bit. We're just going to take a couple of breaths here, about a minute. You might feel like the shoulders tense up a bit. So see if you can really relax the elbows down, tone the belly in. You may need to kind of ease in and out of it at first, and that's fine as well. Just letting the seat come forward on an inhale and then drawing back again on an exhale if you feel like you need a little break. All right, take one more breath here. And then option to stay here, go back into child's pose, or we're just going to move the elbows over to the left and get a deeper stretch in the sideways, the right side body. So elbows move to the left, the hips pull back, right hip draws back a little bit more until you feel that deeper stretch in the right side. Head can come down on the ground. And if this feels like too much with the elbows down, you can straighten the arms, press the palms down, and do it more like an extended child's pose. Either way, you're going to get that stretch in the right side. And then slowly bringing it back up on an inhale. You can walk yourself to center on the hands, all the way to the right, and then coming down to the elbows. Stretching that left hip back. And you can stay on the elbow if that feels good, or you can do this with the palms down. Try to relax across the upper back as much as you can, just softening the shoulders. Relax the jaw, the tongue, the throat. And then on your next inhale, go ahead and bring yourself back up. And just take a moment there. You can sit back on the heels, or you can just swing the feet underneath you and come to a comfortable cross-legged seat. And let's just take a moment there just to let the shoulders drop and relax. You might want to roll them out a little bit. Feel already you might have a little more spaciousness in the neck and the shoulders, or you might feel like, oh man, we're really holding some tension there. The first time I did this practice, it definitely made me realize I was holding a bit more tension than I had thought. So we're going to come into a seated spinal twist next. We're going to twist first towards the right. So you can take the right leg, the right foot over the left. Left heel draws in towards the right butt. You can do this seated up on your blanket. And if this feels like a lot, it's a bit of a stretch for the right hip, just lean back on your hands and straighten the bottom leg. Okay, either way. All right. When you're ready, let's lift the right arm up, circle it back and around, tent the fingers behind you. And then option with the left arm to either wrap around or to bring it in front of the right thigh. And then the belly turns, the ribs turn, the heart turns to the right. You can look straight forward, you can turn and look back over the right shoulder. So this is a yin practice, so remember, we're not always going for the deepest twist, the deepest stretch. We're looking for about 50 to 60% of our max, so that there's something to soften into. Let the sitting bones drop. Let that right hip drop towards the floor. Feel the sole of the right foot heavy on the ground. And then let the face relax and soften. And just notice where the breath moves when you're in this shape. We're not straining. We're allowing the legs to really drop, the seat to really drop. And even though we're in a twist, even the belly can soften here. We don't need to draw the belly in and up. We can let the belly be soft even while it's being a bit constricted. Sometimes I really want to hike up, especially in the right shoulder, the back shoulder. So notice if there's any space to let the shoulders drop away from the ears here. Keeping the neck long. And there's a sense of spaciousness in the twist. And take one more breath here. And then gently unwind on your exhale. You can lean back on your hands and just let the legs bounce out a little bit. We're going to turn to the other side. So, right foot under. Nope. Left foot under. No, right foot under. I just did opposite. Left foot over. Reaching up and around. Coming into the twist on the other side. So slowly making your way in. Take your time with it. Ground down through both sitting bones first. Even if that left sitting bone doesn't fully feel supported, just moving in that direction towards the floor. Left fingertips tent. You could also be on the fist or the palm. And then right arm can be either wrapped around or resting on the thigh. I like to keep my gaze, my chin kind of in line with my chest, but you can turn your gaze in whichever direction feels comfortable for the neck. Maybe let the eyes close, focus a bit inward. Notice if the shoulders, especially that left shoulder, has hiked up towards the ear, relax it down. So shoulders down, tailbone down, sitting bones down, but there's still a lift and a length in the spine. There's still a softness in the jaw. There's a softness in the neck. See if you can even let go a bit in the outer hips, just letting the legs heavy and drop. Left foot grounded. An easy breath. Even when this twist isn't as deep, we're still activating, we're still stimulating that third chakra, that fire center. And this is the center that we can associate also with the fire signs, the sign of Aries, the seat of the will, power, how we find our strength, our inner warrior. One of my favorite descriptions of the emperor in the tarot, who is associated with Aries. It says, I am the one who sees your weaknesses. yet does not weaken. I am the one who sees your weaknesses, yet does not weaken. Last breath here. When you're ready, unwind. Stretch out the legs. You can bounce the knees a little bit or roll the feet out, just letting that go. And then again, you might want to even just take some gentle shoulder rolls forward and back, neck rolls, anytime throughout the practice. What we're going to take now is a shoulder stretch, a variation of Gomukhasana, but we're going to do it on the back, so a lot different, right? So the traditional Gomukhasana is one hand behind the back, one hand over the head. We're still going to do that, but again, just at like 50% capacity and lying down. So maybe a little bit different than what you're used to. So what I like to do here is keep this blanket, but just fold it over a couple of inches so that there's a little bit of extra padding here for my head. I'm going to start on my right side so you guys can see my back. And I'm going to lay down. I'm just going to put my left arm in front of me, lay down. I'm going to have my knees bent here, but you could also take the legs out straight. You'll just use a little bit more of your core for balance. You're going to stretch that right arm up and then turn the palm to face behind you and take it behind the back. Now, normally, if I weren't on my back, I might be able to crawl my hand all the way up between my shoulder blades. But for this yin class, I'm going to move that down, right? So the stretch isn't as much. Then I'm going to lift my left leg up, put my foot on the ground so I can roll over onto my back. I'm going to scoot a little more onto my mat, so I'm actually laying down on the right hand. Now for the left arm, I'm going to lift that up and place it right back behind my head. You might want to place it deeper, like back behind your shoulder blades if you're more flexible in your shoulders. So again, remember we're doing 50 to 60% of our capacity for the stretch. We've got body weight lying on our arms, so we definitely want to make sure this feels comfortable and sustainable for about 3 minutes. So again, I'm going to check in and see if I'm really hiking up in that right shoulder, the shoulder that's behind your back. I'm going to see how much I can relax that away from the ear, even if I have to take a little weight off and wiggle around. And how much I can just let my right shoulder blade heavy towards the ground under me. It's going to be a bit lifted because of the position of the arm, obviously. But just letting that all soften now, feeling a really gentle stretch in that bottom shoulder. Face soft. I've got my right foot, outer edge of the foot on the ground with my knee open. You can do that. You could stretch the leg out long. You can place the foot on the floor. See what feels comfortable here. Knees can be together or apart. So there's lots of ways to be in this. There's no right or wrong way. It's what feels comfortable for your body. Let your attention move inward on the breath. This is a really nice practice to do anytime, but especially after those long days, if we've been driving a lot or on the computer a lot, just to really counter that positioning. on the next breath, we're gonna gently come out of this, okay? So both knees bent, rolling back over onto the right side. And then before we do anything, we're just gonna release the arm and rest it on the hip just for a moment to let that circulation come back into the arm. Pause here for one round of breath. And then when you're ready, we're gonna take it over to the other side. So just with switching position, slowly rolling to the left. I'm gonna start with my left arm out. My head is on the pillow that I made with my blanket. If you need a little more height, you can grab it, but remember your hand is under your head. Reach the arm up, turn the palm back, sweep that arm back behind you. Nice and easy. I'm gonna go way lower on this side because I actually have way less mobility in my right shoulder. And I'm gonna roll really slow onto my back to test it out. So you might need to test this a couple of times with the positioning until you get it right. I just did this practice yesterday, so I know a little bit where I need to be, but feel free to roll back and forth and really play with the position of that hand on your back. It's totally fine if it's down near the low back. All right, left hand comes behind the head or behind the neck or even behind the upper back, wherever it feels comfortable. And then again, left leg can be straight out, knee can be bent with the knee off to the side. Both legs can be bent with knees touching. Find which position feels best. I'm gonna do like a half Baddha Konasana here with my left leg. First few exhales, just letting that left side of the body heavy down. And then letting the right side of the body, excuse me, heavy down. Right shoulder relaxes away from the ear. And see if you're arching the back at all. Sometimes we arch in the mid back or the low back to compensate for a tight upper back. See if there's any room to soften the spine towards the ground. Let the forehead smooth out. Let the temples widen. Let the jaw relax. Easy breath here. And just allowing your attention to come back inward over and over again. Anytime it might wander off, the such a beautiful practice to be able to rein the mind back in when it goes off in a million directions. It's such a beautiful practice to be able to observe without judgment. The mind does want to protect, and it will play many, many stories and look for lots and lots of evidence to prove our point, to validate in order to protect. So really bringing kindness, openness, as we gently draw the attention back in. Nice and slow to come out. First, I take my left hand out under my head, from under my head, and then I slowly and gently roll to the left side, remove the hand behind the back, and then place it down on the hip, just letting it rest for a moment. Good. You can place that right hand on the ground to press you up to a seat. All right, we're gonna take one more shoulder opener. Before we do that, again, let's pause for a moment. Just in a cross-legged seat, again, if you need to move, circle the shoulders, circle the neck. Notice if there's any more space. Sometimes even just turning the gaze over each shoulder, up and down like a gentle yes and no. Just inviting those neck muscles to lengthen and relax. Okay, this next one is going to be mimicking the shape of a Gomukhasana. We just did Gomukhasana. A Garudasana, eagle pose, where we wrap, but we're not gonna wrap fully, and we're gonna do one arm at a time. So it's gonna be more of like this stretch that we often see, not always in yoga, but even just like when we work out, right? So this stretches the upper back and the shoulder blade, maybe even the lat. So I'm going to use my pillow to support underneath my rib cage and a little bit of my chest. I like using the pillow because it's nice and soft and it's not too intrusive. I have seen and been taught a block under the ribs, but that just feels a little bit too edgy in my ribs. You could also use a rolled up towel or rolled up yoga blanket. You could try a bolster. A bolster might feel a bit too much. It would be too much for me because I have a short torso. If you have a longer torso, you have more space, you might be able to get away with a bolster too. But I think most of you should have a pillow of some sort lying around. So I'm gonna put the pillow here. I'm gonna come and kneel in front of it, and then I'm gonna lay down, stretch my legs back behind me, and lay my belly. This is a pretty big pillow, so it's gonna be like my belly and my ribs and a little bit of my chest. Okay, so toes can be tucked under or flat, whatever feels better. We're gonna start with the left arm underneath. So I'm gonna take my left hand and I'm gonna stretch it out towards the right. So I'm crossing my midline here. And then option to just crawl that right arm out in front of you and rest the head down. Okay, so if your support allows, you can bring the forehead right down to your blanket. If that doesn't feel comfortable, turn the cheek And you can face the right arm. And then just take a few breaths here to relax into it. If you need to adjust, make any adjustments. If you need more height under your head. See if you can let the legs relax. And if it feels like too much to keep that right arm straight, you can bend the elbow and let it relax. You can even use the right arm to prop the head. Your heart is facing straight down towards the ground. Breathing now into that stretch in the upper back. Couple more breaths here. Okay, take one last breath. And then we're gonna switch arms. So we'll walk that right hand back so you can press into it and lift the left arm up and out. And then you're just gonna switch sides. Again, shoulders feel a bit different. They're not always in equal proportion as far as flexibility. So take your time. You're taking the right hand across the body in front of the pillow. And then my palm is facing up towards the ceiling. And then I'm turning to face the floor. I'm walking the left arm out and I'm letting the head move down. I'm not taking my forehead all the way to the ground because you won't be able to hear me, but you can let your forehead go all the way down to the ground. Or you can turn your cheek so that you're facing the right fingers. So see what feels better. You can either reach and stretch through that left arm, or you can bend the elbow and relax the arm onto the ground. Either way, you should be able to feel that stretch, gentle stretch in the right shoulder, the right upper back. You can even nestle your head into the corner of your elbow in the left arm. Let the legs go. The heels will kind of fall out to the sides most likely, and that's fine. Just let the belly soften so the low back is nice and long. Again, returning your attention back to the breath. Is there anywhere you can soften right here? And now on your next breath, we're going to come out gently. So you're going to walk that left hand back, press down to lift that right arm up. Walk both hands back. So you can press yourself onto hands and knees. I'm going to walk the knees in for a moment and just sit the hips back for a child's pose. Just taking a breath there. And then when you're ready, you can gently roll up. Okay. Our next position, we're going to move the pillow off to the side. We're going to take our blanket edge and just roll it up. You might need to play with the thickness of this blanket roll. I'm pretty certain I can keep this rolled all the way and it won't be too thick. Again, if you have a longer torso, you might want to roll 2 blankets or like 1.5 or a blanket and a towel. We're going to do a stretch for the side body, like way up here in the upper ribs, an area that we often don't get into. So I'm going to take the pillow up to the top of my mat so it's right in front of the blanket roll. And what I'm going to do is come to sit down, and I'm going to lay over this blanket roll, and I'm going to position the blanket roll so that it's right under my armpit. So I'm going to take my sweatshirt off so you can see it's not in my armpit, it's going to be right under. Okay, so I'm going to line it up so the edge of the blanket roll is right under my armpit. I'm going to take my arm underneath this pillow so I can lay my head on the pillow, which is then resting on my upper arm. And then the top arm can come over the head. I have the couch here I can rest it on, but I'm just gonna let it rest right on my ear, on the side of my head. I have my knees bent. This feels comfortable for me. Again, you can straighten the legs out. It's gonna play a little bit more with your balance, your core. It's gonna be a bit more of an active pose that way. So just see what feels right for you. Now this is an opening. I'm laying with my left side down. So this is an opening for my right side. So the more I allow my left ribs, my bottom ribs to soften into this support, the more that'll allow space up in the top ribs. If you have a shoulder injury, or this feels uncomfortable for that top arm, play around with it. You can bend the elbow, reach the arm back. If you have blocks or like a couch or something here, you can press the palm on that for a higher support. You can even rest the arm down on your side or out in front of you. Either way, you're still going to get that opening here at the very top of the rib cage. Just helping to kind of open up the breathing muscles, the intercostals between the ribs. Giving more space for the diaphragm when we open here. More opportunity for a deeper breath. Just letting the head heavy, letting the head be supported. Smoothing out the brow. Hips and legs nice and heavy. Good, you guys. Last couple of breaths here. On your next exhale, if that arm is up overhead, you can sweep it down towards the hip and then press it into either your blanket roll or the floor to lift yourself up. Okay, so nice and slow transitions. You're just gonna turn over to repeat this on the other side. So, taking your time, if you need to linger, please do. Lining the edge of the blanket roll up with the bottom of the armpit, reaching that bottom arm out. You could also bend the elbow here too. Letting the head relax, and then finding what position is most comfortable for the upper arm. Overhead straight, overhead elbow bent, down at your side, or relaxing in front of you. See if over a few rounds of breath you can just let the bottom ribs melt around that blanket roll. Take your last breath here. As you're ready, coming up out of this position, slow. Again, you could just take a moment in a neutral position. Just letting that land for a moment. You might even take just a really gentle open twist from side to side. All right, now this is going to be just a quick gentle back bend. I'm going to keep my props just like they are, and I'm just going to take my upper back over the back bend and the back of my head. If this feels too deep, you can always unroll this blanket a little bit, or you can take it away altogether and just lay over the pillow, which would be even more gentle. But this is just to counter that work that we've done, and this is a real counter for all that sitting that we do. So I'm going to start with my feet on the ground, and if you feel comfortable, you could stretch them out. I'm going to get the bottom tips of my shoulder blades at the bottom of the blanket roll, and then roll my upper back. I'm going to let my neck, my chin lift just a touch, so it's kind of like a restorative fish pose. The front of my throat opens just gently. You can take your arms up overhead like this. This doesn't feel super lovely for me because my hands aren't supported, so I'm just going to bend my elbows a bit and let my hands, I'm going to clasp one wrist overhead so that my whole arm feels supported. And then it might feel really good to stretch the legs out long and just let the whole front of the body open for a few rounds of breath. Again, imagine just letting the upper back kind of melt around this blanket roll. I'm going to let my pinky toes roll out towards the floor. And at first I feel a bit of resistance in the upper back. It's kind of arching away from the blanket. So I'm going to exaggerate that even more for a moment. And then on an exhale, I'm going to try to soften the upper back. Heavy head. Soft upper back. Just letting the spine drape around that support. So it's breathing into any resistance, any tension, nothing to force. Soft jaw, tongue and throat. Easy breath. You can stay here for as long as you'd like. For the last few minutes, I'm going to invite you to come into just a straight up Shavasana of any way that you'd like. You can totally just move your props completely out of the way and lie flat, although I like to support a little bit more than that. So if you're coming out of the back bend, make sure that you either roll to the side or engage your navel to press yourself up. And then what I'm going to do is sweep that blanket roll to support under the knees. If you have a bolster, you can use that under your thighs. If you have 2 blocks, you can place that under the blanket roll. And then that pillow is there for my head. And then go ahead and get cozy in this if you'd like. You can cover yourself with a blanket, place the hands on the body, let the legs roll open. Maybe take a long sigh out through the mouth. Just letting all of the body weight drain down into the ground, into your support. Just allowing everything to come back to a neutral position. Full Shavasana. Just allowing all of that work to now integrate. Knowing and trusting that no matter what comes up during the practice, if it feels super relaxing or slightly agitating, it's all meant to be just as it should. It's the cultivation of the practice over time. And there'll be days when it feels really relaxing and days when it doesn't, and days where it falls somewhere in between. But it is the effort of coming back again and again, cultivating that awareness, that trust, that no matter what state we find ourselves in, that we're still willing and able to come back to ourselves. There's no right or wrong state. There's no right or wrong feeling. No matter what it is, we're still here, we're still coming back to ourselves, to be present, to be loving. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, through the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voice behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save, your own. If you have more time, feel free to stay here in this relaxation for as long as you wish. If you are ready to close, you can gently deepen the breath and make your way up to a seat. Letting the palms join at the heart, taking a moment of gratitude for showing up today for a practice, maybe a moment of congratulations, big ups for anything you're celebrating today for this full moon in Aries. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this 4-week practice. I hope that it brought you a sense of ease and peace, and I know that you will carry that throughout your days into the world. So thank you for practicing.